I'm Adam Hunter. I'm an actor. I'm a comedian, and I'm just living the dream. I'm giving everything I got because there's nothing else I'd rather be doing than trying to make you laugh.
Great, man. Can you just sit back just a little bit?
Sure.
Up just a little more.
Sure.
Perfect, right there. Yeah, good.
I'm Adam Hunter. I am a stand-up comedian and actor, and I love doing what I do. I give it my best. I try really hard. I work my butt off to try to make you laugh.
Great, brother.
So where am I from? I'm from New York. Born in Manhattan, grew up in Long Island. Went to high school in Maine, boarding school, and now I live out here.
So did you originally, I know you do acting and comedy, did you originally want to do stand-up or did you want to be an actor first?
Well, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a professional wrestler.
Okay.
Like I was in wrestling. I was I was a 4-time New England Class A champion in wrestling, and I loved it. It was my favorite thing to do. And I wrestled in high school and college, and then I quit the team in college. I got a little burnt out of it. I was losing like 15 pounds a week, and then getting back up, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had no idea what I wanted to do, but so then I used to prank call the public access station all the time, and because I had to lose weight, so I couldn't go out and like party, because I was always like, and I would always call up and like, they have these like serious topics, and I'd be like, hey, you know Devane? They'd be like, who am I? Devane on my dick, just like kind of just make myself laugh. And then when I quit the team, like my high school really like enforced like, going for your best and trying to reach your unique potential and doing something you love. And if you do something you love, then the money will follow. This is like at the Hyde School in Maine. It was a really good, great boarding school. And so the thing's ripping. Great. Hey, turn up the thing. Bang. Water. All right. I'm like hearing like drips in my head. Okay, so it was a really great boarding school. So then I was like, you know what? I want my own television show. Okay. So I went down to the station, and I didn't really learn it, but I pretended to learn it. And I had this like show called These Nuts at SUNY Binghamton. And basically it was a call-in show, and I was the talk show host, and I had 5 of my wrestling friends, and I promoted it. I'm like, this is gonna be a huge show, blah blah blah. So all of a sudden, like, I really had no format for the show. I was just me, just kind of with my buddies, kind of people taking calls. People could call in. So what happened was this girl called in, and she's like, hey, my name is Hannah. You swept me at the gym, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, well, do you have a nice ass? Probably, back and forth. I was like 17 years old.
Right, yeah.
And then what happened was then somebody else called in, like, hey, that girl Hannah, she swept me at the gym, she wouldn't let me touch her breasts. And before you know it, like, they're going back and forth, and the entire school was now watching my show.
Oh, wow.
Like, every dorm, and people are just being brutal. They're like, yo, you look like Vanilla Ice, or, hey, are you Corey Haim? Or I had, like, really bad cauliflower ear at the time. This never happens, by the way. I swear to God, this has never happened, that alarm. So I really bad cauliflower ear, and everybody was like, hey, your ear's messed up, but it was just fun. It was fun. I was definitely nervous because I had not gotten all that attention, or really know how to. I was a little bit maybe more abrasive than I used to, than I should have been from Long Island. But what happened was then Hannah's like then comes down to the studio to defend herself against all these kids that are calling in about her and saying that she puts out, or she doesn't put out, or she's a whore, or some girls like, you like stole my jeans. So she goes down, and everyone is now calling in about her, which was a bad idea for her to defend herself live on the air. because she can't really, I mean, you can't see the callers, but they can see you. And they start like, hey, can I park my car up your snatch? It just became brutal, right?
Wow, yeah.
So then she goes back to her dorm, and there's like a riot on campus, and then the other guy, Seth, she came on the show. So long story short, which is not even short anymore, but the entire, she ended up suing the school for like $40 million. I got sued for $20 million for negligence. The kid got sued. Went to the Supreme Court of New York, and my dad's like, I don't know, I sent you to college for 2 months. You come home with a $20 million lawsuit.
Yeah.
Can you just go to class? But then there were no more shows on Binghamton Television afterwards. For a year, and they had a disclaimer. But it got thrown out of the Supreme Court of Brooklyn. But that show, I was like, man, this would be great to do this for a living. Imagine being a talk show host. So then I was like, I needed I didn't know. I was like, I'm in college, and I just realized that everybody, I was like, okay, I'm going to school, I'm doing okay in school, I'm cheating a little bit to get good grades, but I'm not really, it's all about the grades, I'm not really learning to learn, I'm just being like everybody else, I'm going to go into the corporate world, I'm going to marry some chick, I'm just going to go to happy hour and look forward to Jets football on the weekends. Yeah. I was like, man, there's got to be something better, and I was like, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know if it was acting or comedy. So then I started taking an acting class in New York. And I liked it, but I couldn't sit still because I have pretty bad ADD. My foot was always shaking. I was always cracking the class up. Yeah. And everyone started laughing, and I'm like, I'm pretty funny. Maybe I should do comedy. And there's a course saying, hey, you want to be a comic? So I took the course. This guy, Chris Murphy, ran it. And I just fell in love with stand-up comedy. I'm like, this is... And plus, I knew that, I'm not the most talented person. I think if you put me in a room with 20 people, I definitely won't shine as oh, that guy's talented. Right. 100%. But I know that if I work hard enough,
you'll at least make the top 8.
Yeah, I'll make the top 8. But I'll also people are gonna quit, and I'm just gonna keep working and working and working, and eventually that hard work then becomes talent. Right. And I think with me, it's never been a case of even with wrestling, I wasn't a natural gifted wrestler. I mean, my 8th grade year, I was 10-7 or something, But I just fell in love with it, and I went to the wrestling camps, and I went to this, with that, and same thing with comedy. It's I was telling Brian, the good news about stand-up comedy is that they have made it so hard to make it. Okay. Literally, it's almost impossible to make it as a stand-up comic. I've been doing. Is that really gonna kill the interview?
No, we can totally cut it out. Yeah.
Okay, so I've been doing comedy 12 years, right? Mm-hmm. And started off doing comedy in laundromats, supermarkets, donut shops. I mean, with great guy Dimitri Martin. I mean, great comics were in these donut shops and in supermarkets. And they make it. Then it's then you got to bring your friends to a show. It's a bringer show. Right. So you want to perform, you got to bring 8 people. Right? And then your friends come and spend $20, buy a 2-drink minimum, and see terrible comedians because everyone's doing comedy for a month. Right. But they all have 8 friends. Yeah. So then your friends are then mad at you because you've tricked them into seeing this. Right. They don't know that that you had to bring them to perform. Right, they think that oh, it's so nice that he invites me to come every 2 days to see him. And then the only friends that come see you are the ones that have no life. Right. Who are willing to go see you every 2 days. So then you end up hating those people. So you end up keeping friends around that you don't want to have. Right. So then in New York, it became barking was the thing, where you could hand out flyers to people on the street because Times Square is such a tourist trap to get them into a comedy club. And I became the best barker in New York. I was able to basically people walking on the street, hey, what's up? We've got a great comedy show, comics from MTV. You throw out names. Whose line is it anyway? Right. None of them. It's all the guys giving out the flyers. Right? Yeah. So they come in, they see the show, they go, wait a minute, that's the guy that and then by the time that they realize that, you're already right. So I did that for 4 years in Times Square, and that was a miserable experience. I mean, people were I would see ex-girlfriends on the way to Broadway shows with their new boyfriends wearing suits and dresses, and hey, this is my ex-boyfriend. I'm like, come to Hamburger Harry's, people would spit on me. I mean, get a job, but because the restaurants were so effective of quadrupling their business because there's so many comics that want to do it. Every restaurant in Times Square then had a comedy show. Right. So now literally you can't walk around Times Square without getting accosted by 20 comedians, you know,
Yeah.
which is people, you know, I like to say that I'm somewhat responsible for that. So then what happened was I started getting good at comedy after 5-6 years, and I won some contests like funniest comic in New York, which is a rigged every contest is rigged.
But you're always entering stuff, trying to move up, right?
Yeah. My manager also managed the
the
club that had the contest, you know. Yeah. So like I guess all 4 of his clients won.
Okay.
So, but they like flew me to New York, and then this guy Anthony Clark, who was on Yes Dear, said, "Hey man, you're really funny. We'll get you a manager, an agent, blah blah blah." The prize was like a spot at the Improv, right?
Okay, yeah.
And then I was like, great. So I like picked them up, and at the time I was working at like, to make money. I was a shop boy.
Oh, let's back up for a second. So the prize for winning the one deal was a night at Improv
in Hollywood. They fly out to Hollywood from New York.
and that's where the one guy saw you, right?
Yeah.
And so that was kind of like a big shock for you then. I mean, so that actually happened.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Right.
But the guy also, I mean, he was always very nice to me.
Mm-hmm.
But people were like, you know, I would go to his parties, and let's just say that there weren't a lot of girls at the parties. We'll just go there. You know, like he never hit on me. He was always very sweet to me.
Right.
But but let's just say that I mean, but he's always very nice to me.
Right.
You know, and never hit on me or anything. So yeah, so he actually did get me a manager and an agent. So
that worked out for you. Then.
Totally cool.
That's
totally
cool.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering. I'm like, how come there's no girls in the hot tub? But yeah. So he was very cool.
That's cool.
Very very cool. Trying to put that in the thing. So anyway, so then what happened was at the time I was working at an 80s club in New York. I was selling shots. And I was in this play where I was giving lap dances to horny chicks from New Jersey.
Oh wow.
And I was making like $1,300 cash a night.
Really?
Money in my shoe, money there. Yeah, it was a very degrading job. I kept my clothes on. It was a pretty degrading job because that was another job where I saw people go, "Hey, aren't you the guy from you think went to my college?" And people tried to steal my pink headband, and I had glitter everywhere. It was like a Tony and Tina's wedding where you didn't know who was in the play.
Right.
It was called Birdie's Bachelorette Party, and I was the stripper in the bachelorette party. Then afterwards, I had to work at the Culture Club downstairs, which was all these like Jersey Shore kids and Staten Island kids. And I'd be like, "Hey, you want to buy a shot?" They're like, "Hey, yo, Vinny, this fag wants to." And I was like, I mean, it was just brutal.
Yeah.
But I was like, one day I'll make it. I'll get out of here. You know, it was like the whole Flashdance, thing. So, or Fame, or whatever. I think Fame's the right movie. So anyway, so then I moved to LA, and I quickly found out that like, they weren't welcoming arms. Like I was getting on 5 minutes at the end of each night. Driving an hour for no money. So I'm like, I gotta figure out a better way. So I went around to UCLA. I figured, okay, there's college kids, don't have to go anywhere, and they'll see a comedy show. And if I get the college kids to come, the comics will come. I'll start my own show out there. That's what I did in New York. In New York, I had my own comedy club, but I didn't make any money. I just did it for the love because comedy is the most addicting thing in the world. I mean, I know heroin addicts that have quit heroin who should quit comedy, and they can't quit comedy, right? Because you go on stage and you just feel loved. And I never had. My mom left when I was 3. She went to a mental hospital. She had schizophrenia. I didn't see her since.
Oh, wow.
I had a stepmom that I never got along with. That like, she had her son that she loved, and me and my sister, she didn't want us there, and we were kind of a burden to her. And even recently, she told me I should quit comedy as of 2 months ago. Like.
Nice.
So, and my dad managed Alice Cooper, and was a great guy, but he's always been in kind of recovery, and great father, but not exactly, sometimes could be more of a kid than I am, and so the love that I get from the audience is is addicting. I mean, it's like, oh my God, like every time I make people laugh at my problems, I'm like, this is the greatest, it's the greatest job ever. Comedy's a weird thing. It's like,
really?
That's the longest one we had. I said comedy's a weird thing because it's like you write down your most painful experiences, embarrassing. Fuck, man.
Like this one?
Yeah, this is I feel like I'm being punked right now. Fucking Ashton Kutcher's gonna come out. We're gonna keep fucking sending. So write down your most painful experiences, and then you have strangers laugh at them, and if they don't laugh, you feel bad about yourself.
Right.
It's it's insane, right? So but anyway, so I realized I came up to LA, and I'm like, I gotta get people. I gotta get a place where I can kind of have my own stage time because
when did you come out to LA? I'm sorry.
7 years ago. So I went to UCLA. I walked around campus every day and promoted. I found the bar that would let me have a comedy room there for nothing, I mean not pay me.
Yeah.
I mean and I basically sold tickets to a show that didn't exist, $1, $2 to all these kids, and I mean the show existed, but I was like. I didn't even have it wasn't even a cover. I was like, hey, for $1 you could see great comedians, blah, blah. Because I knew that if I got kids to the show, that I can get the comics. And I did. Eventually we just gave up on the cover because no one was paying anyway. But I had the hottest night. Dude, could you get that press 9? But after a while, I had the hottest night in California. I had like... This is so brutal. I had the Westwood Brewing Company, which at one point, we went to every sorority house to promote it, because I knew if the sorority girls came, because I found out that you could do announcements. Fuck, man. I don't know what to do.
That's gonna be really good for the DVD. We're gonna just cut all these together, just put one after the other. Yeah.
It's so brutal. So I found out that like
you should. I wish you could time it. You know. So
I'm trying. I'm trying.
You could
man.
actually like time it to the thing.
I found out that like on Monday nights you can go to sorority houses and anybody can make an announcement. Whether you
we can't make an announcement.
Whether you go to school or not, right? You could basically. So I went into the sorority houses every Monday. And I'm like, hey guys, it's a comedy show. And eventually they caught on that I didn't go to the school. But it was like all these hot chicks wearing dresses. It was the greatest thing ever until they got annoyed with me and like started kicking me out of the thing and eventually started heckling the girls there because I was like, use it as a free whatever.
Yeah.
So, but at one point, because I knew that if I had the hot sorority girls, I would have the comics. And within 6 months I had Dane Cook, the Wayans brothers, Jeff Ross, Greg Fitzsimmons, Ian Bagg. I had a lot of great comics in LA come down to the Westwood Brewing Company performing. Yeah, and I used that to trade off with other comedians and to kind of make my known. And then I got put on Craig Kilborn because of that show, and I ended up doing all these overseas tours for the military because of that show. I ended up going to Korea, Japan, Guam, Bahrain, Guantanamo Bay, Africa, all for the military. And then so that's where that kind of came.
So you think definitely making it yourself is the way to go? I mean, just you gotta do it yourself.
100%. I mean, some people like they have a certain look or like, they're kind of maybe their family they're wired in, but in my experiences, like every break that I've gotten has been because of like when I went out and like from my experiences doing comedy where no one's like, because half the shows I do, people don't even know there's a comedy show there.
Right.
They're just at a bar and the guy has a microphone, or like they're in a laundromat and some guy tells jokes. And to me, those were always the funniest experiences. So I created a show called Kamikaze Comedy where people aren't expecting it. So like we would tell these girls they're getting a male stripper. Instead they get like Godfrey and Brad Williams popping out of a bag telling jokes.
Oh wow.
Or like at an old age home, we told them they were getting a motivational speaker. And they got me, Theo, Brody, and Jay Davis telling jokes. So, and that, in tune, like, got me in a room for NBC, who then gave me an audition for Last Comic Standing. But even that, like, Last Comic Standing, 3 times I auditioned. They gave me a slip saying you're on the show, and then I got a phone call saying you're off the show.
Really?
Yeah, because even if you're on the show, they pick 50 people, and they go, these are the 20 that we're gonna keep. And I go, but you told me I was on. Sorry. So it's like, and then finally, last 2 years ago, they put me back on the show. And then I had to kind of like, in some ways, play a character that I knew would be, wasn't necessarily me. Mm-hmm. Like I'm like, because I tried just being me and they just were not buying it. So I'm like, oh, I'll be the hyper cocky, like, which is kind of close, but I'll be the guy that like, I'll be the controversial guy.
Right.
So I was. And the audition, I'm the best comic. I'm better than this guy, that guy, that guy. I knew that would help get me on the show, and as well as my sets. But they put me right through, figuring I'd be the villain.
Right.
And then when I got to the house, I didn't badmouth anybody, and I just talked about how I coach a wrestling team in Brentwood for at a charter school, and how I work with kids who had cancer in New York, and how my mom left, and they were very angry with me.
Oh, wow.
And then they were like, "What about you and him? Like that guy's a great comic and." this guy's a great comic.
They try to get you on a little bit.
They tried all the time, but then eventually they stopped interviewing me.
Oh, really?
But that's when I knew that I wasn't gonna win.
Yeah.
Because I started watching the show and I was getting like 1/5 of the screen time that everybody else was, and the producer started managing some of the contestants during the show, and I was like, and those were the ones that were getting, and even though maybe they were saying horrible stuff in the house,
Right.
that wasn't what I was seeing on the show.
Yeah.
And then I was saying great things in the house, and they didn't mention that like I got the name Hunter because I worked at the Ronald McDonald House for kids who had cancer, and then I like didn't mention that like I was doing like all these great things, or they was just like every time I'd see me I'd be like I'm the best, you know, and I'm like okay, sure.
So that's how they cut it together. So what's your take on reality TV? Do you like it? Are you liking reality TV or not?
I mean, it's a double-edged sword. It's like, I mean, I watch. To me, I like the reality TV that I like are the ones where like The Ultimate Fighter, where there's like a skill involved, or The Contender, or even somewhat American Idol, where like okay, they're singers.
Right.
I mean,
But The Hills.
like for the love of Ray J, the Hills is the worst.
Yeah.
Because it's like they're not even competing. They're just like spoiled kids.
Right.
You know, like they don't even have jobs.
Right.
I mean, they have jobs now because they were on The Hills. You know.
Yeah. Famous for what?
That's the worst one. But yeah, I mean, it's just like the one. But you know, it was kind of thing where like for comics, there's so few opportunities because a lot of it's so inside. You know, like there's so much like you know stuff that goes behind the scenes that people don't really know about, and like an actual. And the thing is, people aren't watching stand-up comedy on TV like we would hope. You know, Comedy Central doesn't get the numbers that like, let's say, you were on Johnny Carson.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it used to be like if you're on Johnny Carson, that could be that was a huge break.
Right,
you know, and now people go on Leno or you know Ferguson, and I mean those are all great shows to go on. And don't get me wrong, I'd go on them in a second, and they're great that they have comics. I'm gonna say that they don't necessarily have the impact that they once had.
Right.
You know.
I agree.
So.
Do you think the internet's desensitizing that? Do you think there's more availability to get yourself out there without that? Or?
I think the internet helps because it cuts out the middleman. I mean, it used to be like you had to jump through so many hoops. You know, and you had all these people whose their whole job was just to say no to you.
Right.
Like they basically just get paid to say no. And I'm like, you know, like for example, Tyler Perry, who's probably the most I think successful guy out there.
Right.
You know, he was saying how hard it was because everyone kept saying, no, there's no audience for church-going black. They're not going to watch people on your movies. And he said, yes, they will.
Right.
And then he literally had to go from church to town performing
Do it as a play,
to get the audience, you know. And I think that like you know the internet helps that. But then of course now the internet's become so desensitized where like everybody everybody with a camera now
Right.
or with a phone has a show.
Yeah.
So it's actually sometimes hard to find
The good stuff.
the good stuff, you know.
So where do you see this this trend going in the next 5-6 years? Do you?
I mean, it depends. I mean, for a stand-up comic, the only way, like, I mean, look, I pay my bills doing stand-up comedy, you know, which I think is probably better than, like, let's say 85% of the comedians out there. You know, most comedians can't pay the rent, you know, it sucks. They have day jobs, you know, but there's a difference between a comedian and someone who says that they're a comedian.
Right.
I mean, a lot of times you watch these shows on, you know, VH1, they says comedian, but like, I'm like, really? Like, just because you go to like an alternative room and do comedy once every couple weeks doesn't make you a comic, you know? Like, it's like, a comedian is someone who's like every single night honing their craft and really giving a shit and headlining.
Yeah.
You know, anybody can put together a tight 10, 15, not anybody, but a tight 10, 15 minutes is great, but, you know, if I'm expecting someone to pay $25 for admission or $20 and buy 2 drinks, I better have a solid 45 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, so to answer your question, where do I see it going is like, you know, I mean, look, the cream always rises to the top. You know, so eventually, if people want to laugh,
Right.
you know, and it's hard. You can't really fabricate a laugh. People spend millions of dollars on movies and don't get laughs.
Yeah.
You know, so if you're funny and you work on your stuff, you're gonna I think be somewhat successful, you know, that's what I'm banking on.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm definitely not going the easy. Definitely not going the. I'm making these cuts really easy for you, but I'm definitely not going the easy route. Whereas, like, I mean, I was in Tallahassee yesterday. I drove 2 hours to the gig, and then 5 hours that night, and took 2 planes to get back here. Yesterday, went to acting class for 4 hours, and leave for Oklahoma City at 8 o'clock in the morning. You know, and I'm probably clearing $800 for the week. You know, so I'm just making the rent. You know. But the good news is that there's such a hard road. Most people quit.
Yeah.
They say, "Fuck this," you know. Especially when but you know, there's no get rich quick scheme in comedy. Mm-hmm. That's the hard part for some people, but that's the beauty of it.
Right.
And the best comedians have paid their dues. The Richard Belzers and the Louis C.K.'s and the Chris Rocks and the Dane Cooks and Jeff Rosses and the Greg Giraldo's and Dave Attell's. I mean, those guys all pay their dues.
Right.
Those aren't guys that got 15 minutes, put it on YouTube, and now they're traveling, the country. You have to know how to write a joke.
Right. So you think comedy is probably the hardest craft out here to actually make it in? And there's no one-hit wonders, let's say?
Singing's brutal as well. Especially now with the music industry, with it's like all ringtones.
Yeah.
And it's hard to they're not giving deals. Singing's pretty bad too.
Okay. Do it this way. Do you consider yourself an artist?
Yeah, I consider myself an artist, definitely. I mean, the art that I do though is to make it seem so easy that I don't look like an artist. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the thing. It's like if you go to a museum, you're like, wow, that guy's an artist, right?
Right.
If you go to a comedy club, the best comedians look like they're just out there just making shit up.
Right.
And you don't think that guy's an artist. You think that guy's just up there telling dick jokes and having a good time. But they're both artists, but the hard part is making it look easy.
Right.
And that's like but there's no substitute. It takes 10 years, I think, to be a good comic. I mean, to be a real good comic. I mean, anybody could do well in like a hot set. Yeah. It's when you're up there headlining, and at minute 7, you're like, wow, this is gonna be a long night. Like they're not laughing.
Yeah,
they're not laughing at my A stuff.
Right.
Like I put I opened hard, and now it's like, now what do I do? Because because there are so many comedians out there, you're so replaceable. Mm. The only time you're not irreplaceable is if you're a huge draw. Right. And even then you're replaceable. And the only way to become a huge draw, like there are guys out there I know with half-hour specials on Comedy Central, which is so hard to get, and they have day jobs.
Right. Yeah.
But because the half-hour special isn't bringing people into the club.
Right.
They air it 3-4 times, but maybe hardcore comedy nerds are going, but it's not like it once was. So you have to have a sitcom, and that sitcom has to make it.
Right.
I know people with sitcoms who don't draw.
Yeah.
You have to have a movie career, and not just straight to DVD movies that no one sees. Right. We're talking about Hangover and Zach Galifianakis.
Yeah.
You have to have a radio show, and now I'm talking about a local radio show. That's great for your hometown in Utah, but it has to be either a syndicated show or a serious show that people watch, or listen to. I mean, this is like Howard Stern, like Artie Lang, which is how many how many shows on Sirius people watch. Like, there's a billion of them that
Don't listen to, yeah.
So or you have to you have to have a talk show. Mm-hmm. You have to be Chelsea, and Chelsea. I mean, I'm not gonna knock Chelsea. She's worked very hard, but she was also like dating the president of the network. And I'm not saying that's how she would have made it anyway. Right. I mean, she's a talented girl, pretty girl, but it is what it is.
Certain ends, yeah.
Yeah. So.
Well, do you so do you think that comedy and Hollywood go hand in hand then, or that acting you have to cross medias?
Yeah, I mean, look, you can't just you can just make it as a strictly stand-up, and Dane Cook did that, but he also used the internet, and I mean, certain guys you can do it. I mean, Daniel Tosh, he wasn't an actor, talk show host, and he made it basically as a stand-up, I think, Mm-hmm. What I was saying before, it's like, let's say I'm probably in the, top 15%, 10% of comics because I see who's working. It's
Yeah.
you know, and I'm still just like struggling to make it. You know, if I was in any other field in the world and I was in the top 10%,
Right.
as opposed to maybe I maybe include acting in that, I'd be doing really well.
Right.
Like if I was the top 10% lawyer, doctor, insurance salesman, cleaner. I mean, let's garbage man. I'd be like, dude, teacher. I'm top 10% teacher. Yeah, I'm making six figures.
Yeah.
You know, but as a comic, yeah, bottom percent of the top 10% of however that came out is like you're getting by.
Right.
You know, so you got to be top 1%.
Yeah.
Maybe 2, but 1%. And you think about how hard it is, you know, to be in the top 1% of anything.
Right.
It's like it's brutal.
But do you feel like every day is your first day again out here? Do you feel like it's a constant struggle to
You know, the beauty of Hollywood is that, like, I have ADD, and I can never see myself, like, I can never go back. I mean, stand-up comedy, every time I'm on stage, I'm like, I love this. I don't want to get off stage.
Right.
I literally have to be lit a lot of times, 3, 4, 5 times. Like, how many people don't want to leave work?
Right, yeah.
How many people, like, they get a phone call, and they're like, hey, you know, you get to work next week. Yes!
Yeah.
You know, most people get called into work, and it's not because of the money.
Yeah.
It really, that's probably the problem. It's like being a male porn star. It's just, a lot of people will do it for free, you know? And the same thing with comedy, is that, you know, like the industry knows how accessible we are. I mean, literally, you make money on the road, you make money in colleges, you make money in corporate. Clubs in LA, you don't really make as much as you should. I mean, certain clubs, Laugh Factory pays well, and like the Improv pays well if it's your show, and you know, they pay well. But there are a lot of places out there that don't pay well because they know that so many comics will do it.
Just get stage time.
For stage time,
Yeah.
you know, and like in New York there was a union for it. You know, they went on strike. You know, and now they're getting I think it's $100 or $85 on the weekends for a set. And
Oh wow.
$35
So
during
it's
the
a
week.
minimum, though.
Yeah, you know, that's the problem with the union is that certain comics are like, well, I've been doing this 25 years. This guy, like, why?
You get 35, I'll get 35.
Yeah, it's like it's tough.
Yeah.
But stand-up comedy is you know, I've done drugs, and you know, when I used to win a wrestling tournament, like win, you know, and I'm talking about like you know, I won the New England's I think twice I won the New England tournament, and when I got my hand raised, like all of a sudden like the world would stop, and I'm like, oh, happiness, you know, and that's how comedy is, you know, on like a nightly basis, you know. I mean, not always. A lot of times it's brutal, you know,
Yeah.
but that had that. I was like, wow, man, like people are crying.
Yeah.
Because they're laughing so hard.
Well, let's talk about that. What was one of your most memorable nights on stage?
My
My next question's the harder one, but
memorable nights is like, I mean, sometimes like, you know, like when I was doing the military gigs, you know, in Africa, Japan, Korea, Guam, Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, soldiers, you know, are like, thank you so much.
yeah.
You know, I needed that.
Wow.
You have no idea how much I needed that laugh. You know, sometimes I get emails from people. You know, I just had a brain aneurysm, and I needed to laugh. You made me laugh. You know, people. Hey, I just went through cancer. Like, you have no idea how much I needed to laugh. Thank you so much. Old people. When old people laugh, I'm like, this is great. You know, like, this is awesome. When I used to work at the Ronald McDonald House, and we used to bring the kids over to comedy shows, and those kids would laugh. I mean, there's nothing better than looking out on the stage and seeing someone like literally have a belly laugh, tearing because of you.
Yeah.
Because you know you're like, wow, I'm fucking doing something great. You know.
Yeah.
When last comic standing, because like when they told me I was off the show, I cried. Like not after when I got kicked off, when I made it through and they said you're off the show.
Yeah.
I was like, oh. And then they call me, so you're back on the show, fly to Vegas tomorrow, after I'd already like been in bed for 2 weeks, depressed, and plan on going back to school or something. And then I get there, and I knew I needed a standing ovation, and the toughest guy to follow I knew was going to be Dan Natterman, because he's got quick jokes, he's a funny guy, and of course they had me follow Dan Adderman. I could have called it, and I got a standing ovation.
Oh, wow.
And Richard Belzer and Steve Sharifka were like, "Great job, man! Like, you know, that was awesome, and you got so many great jokes, and the crowd loved you." And I'm like, and Vegas is, I'm like, dude, like, it was like, oh, you know.
Yeah.
And then of course I thought, I'm probably gonna edit this out, like, not even show this and show me failing or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, you know, those moments are priceless. I mean, but then there's also like, I did a comedy club in Arizona, and it was at a strip club, and I killed it on stage, and it was like all the strippers afterwards were like, "Oh, you're so funny," and Miss Nude World came up to me and brought me on stage and put me in my boxer shorts, lied me down, and started straddling me. And then I ended up having sex with her in the butt that night, and then banging the bartender and getting a hand job from one of the strippers.
Wow.
So that was pretty cool too. Those were also a close second.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
So, now, what's one of the most, well, not you would want to forget, what's one of the worst nights you've had up there, brother?
There have been a lot of nights. One of them was I did a year 1 or 2 did comedy in front of an all black crowd, and I brought this girl that I already slept with to the show, and I was trying to impress her, and they booed me off stage, and actually, a comic started the booing.
Oh.
And then he was like, "Man, Bubba, audition's over." He was giving me weird heckles, and then afterwards he gave me his card to take his comedy course. I was like, that was really stupid. That was a bad night. I mean, there have been a lot of nights where I'm just like, when I was in Africa, there was a guy I was on tour with who was the most racist guy, black guy. He was like, "Man, OJ's innocent, and white people have it so easy, and you'll never know what it's like to be a black man." I mean, which are all true statements except for the OJ, but just like picking on me all the time. "Man, you're gay, blah blah." You just wouldn't stop trying to rib me.
Right.
His name, and finally, I was ignoring him, and I had to wake him up before and after every show. Before the show, I had to wake him up. I had to like pay for him to get through customs. He was doing 15 minutes of just bashing George Bush for the military and closing with peanut butter on his dick. He gets booed off. Basically, I had to cover his time, but I was ignoring him.
Right.
And then finally, he just kept going. And then finally, we were in Africa, and first thing I see in Africa is a cat meowing. Right, another cat comes behind it, spreads it, and starts doing the cat and like raping the cat. And I was like, "Oh my god!" That was the first thing I was like, "Oh my god!" But anyway, so these soldiers pick us up, drive us to this canteen, and we're all hanging out in the back, and I had a couple drinks in me, and I was tired, no sleep, like, I was, we was flying, like, Air Kenya, and, like, the plane almost died.
Right.
They were showing, like, it was, I was, like, the only white guy, it was all Muslims on the plane, and they were showing, like, Passenger 9/11, I mean, I thought it was, like, the movie, it was just brutal, right?
Yeah.
The guy starts messing with me, saying, "Adam," just telling the soldiers, "Adam's gay, Adam's a dude, like, Adam likes dudes," all this stuff. Finally, I was like, enough. So I pushed the guy, and the guy goes, "I'm gay, really?" Pow. Which I didn't care if he called me gay, but I was like, enough of this guy.
Yeah.
So the guy, like, came into me, and I just basically got an underhook and overhook, stepped over, slammed, his legs went flying in the air, boom, right?
Yeah.
Now, we broke a bunch of bottles that are on the ground. The soldiers had to break us up because I was like, I had my hand cocked, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, they were like, we get thrown into like this bathroom by this guy, Sergeant Haggerty, and he's like, "What's the matter with you guys?
Yeah.
You're supposed to be making us laugh. This is a peacekeeping mission, and we're supposed to like, blah, blah, And he's like, "What's wrong with you guys?" And then he's like, I'm like, "Sorry, the guy's just, and then he's like, "I deserve that." The guy's like, "I'm either going to take your money or punch you in the stomach."
Right.
So I'm like, punch the stomach. So Sergeant Haggerty punches us both in the stomach, right?
Holy shit.
It didn't hurt. I mean, my adrenaline was already like,
Yeah.
and he's like, "You need to find Jesus in your life," and this, that. So then I just remember thinking, like, I'm in Djibouti, Africa. I just beat up the other comic and got punched in the stomach during drill sergeant, and it's pilot season, and I'm like, how many wrong turns did I make in my life to get here?
Yeah.
Like, it was horrible.
Wow, that was a crazy night, man. That's cool. I don't know where to go from that. That is awesome. So, now how you've been in the business for this amount of time, and you're saying that you're the top 10%, and you're only making $800 a fucking week. How would you change the business? What would you do to improve it?
How would I change the business? By giving me a show. You know what? It's like, I don't know. I think a lot of times, like, I travel from town to town, and I definitely lately, like, things have been going really well. I've been booked back. The last 5 clubs that I got booked back before I even left, which is like the best feeling.
Great, yeah.
Most of the time, you leave there, then you got to call the booker. Hey, I want to do. Okay, open up your date book, and then you book the next year in the fall or something. And it's like, and so nothing better than like, did they book you? But hey, man, what you want to come back in October? And it's like May. Like, I think a lot of times, like, I think a lot of times people that are in positions don't necessarily like care what, like, I think a lot of times people look down on like the average folk, like the working class, like the people, like they go, even like let's say the red states, let's call them the red states, like, oh, the people, they're all just blah 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 blah, they voted for George Bush, and and I think sometimes people become intellectual snobs a little bit of like, I'm only gonna put what I want on TV versus what the people want. And I think a lot of times, like, it takes, like, the industry, for it to be right in their face, for them to, like, give other people opportunities. Like, the Blue Collar Comedy Tour. Like, okay, I wouldn't say I'm the biggest Larry the Cable Guy fan or the Jeff Foxworthy, but I definitely respect their hustle, respect their work ethic, and I know that they make people really happy. Yeah. I mean, people love them. Dane Cook, I mean, I've been coming for 18 years, but he's been the funniest dude around Hollywood for like 10, 12. Yeah. But it took like him having to show, look at all my fans. Yeah. Now, and same goes for like the Kings of Comedy. I mean, those guys were all doing it for a long time. Yeah. Bernie Mac, D.L. Hewley and Steve Harvey and the other guy Cedric. And sometimes, like, everybody's so concerned with finding, like, the next best big thing, and they write off people that are actually doing it as, like, either has-beens or, we've already seen them, Yeah. And in the process, they take people who've been doing comedy for, like, let's say 2 or 3 years, and they put them to the wolves, because it's kind of happened to me, and they go, hey, look, guys, this is the next big thing. But that person's green. They're not developed. Right. And then the people see them before they're developed, and then they pass on them. Yeah. So then they got to wait another 10 years in line. And that's kind of what happens sometimes in Hollywood is that like, people get seen before they're ready, and then get written off. Yeah. And a lot of times people quit because of that. Yeah. Or they go, I had my shot. Yeah. And I think that kind of happens with me a little bit, and because I know when I first moved to Hollywood, I got in front of everybody. And probably before I was ready, I had 20 minutes. I had taken theater acting, but I didn't necessarily take it on-camera courses, and I was very big, and I was nervous, and I let my nerves get in the head. I didn't really audition that well, and I didn't really know kind of how to hit my mark. I didn't know how to break down a script. I didn't know how to, basically I was prepared, like I'd memorized stuff, but I didn't really kind of live in the moment and connect with my reader and have a good room or whatever, So I think that sometimes, like, rather than like, hey, you here, just deal with what's in front of you, and don't necessarily do it for self-interest. Right. Like, just because you manage someone or because you blah blah blah, and just because you have like sometimes, like, I think that some people, like, I know there are a lot of guys out there that do the road that are written off as like, oh, they're hacks or they're just doing they're road comics. Yeah. They're making people laugh, and they would love the opportunity to have TV shows and stuff. And a lot of times I feel like comedians play to the back of the room, like they like go up there with like their notebook and like, hey, blah, blah, and they just do jokes that are like too offensive for people to laugh, and or for the room to laugh. And I'm like, dude, these people they're fucking, this is your audience. Yeah. Like the fucking kid that, like, the kid that in the back of the room who who's on a trust fund who wears pre-torn jeans isn't the one that's gonna come see you and pay $20.
Yeah.
But I feel like sometimes those people that get like rewarded are the ones that like only have 9 minutes of material and can't deal with adversity.
Right.
You know. That sometimes like they force you to do enough shitty situations where you end up becoming what they want you to be. You know, if you do enough horrible bar rooms where you got to scream your act, well, guess what? Your act's gonna be screaming.
Yeah.
And then now you're gonna be able to say, you know, and like I think sometimes people like they're so quick to label people. Oh, that guy's a dirty comic.
Right.
Oh, that guy's an urban comic. That guy's an alternative comic. Like
he's a comic.
Fucking comic.
Yeah.
It makes people laugh, you know? And that's, you know, it's like the alternative comedy scene in Hollywood has become so mainstream that the guys who are actually mainstream are now alternative.
Yeah.
You know?
It's interesting. Yeah. That's a good point, man. So now you've been traveling, you travel all the time. You moved out here, you're only home, what?
I basically have to, Sunday to Wednesday I'm home. I'm in acting class every Monday, you know? And I'm trying to make my own breaks. I mean, I wrote 2 scripts. One is about a comic who's not very good, so he's trying, but he takes jobs as a male stripper, and then he ends up becoming this great male stripper, but it ends up blowing up in his face. And the other one is about a wrestling coach, because I coach a wrestling team out here twice a week, and it's like the Bad News Bears of wrestling.
Okay.
I also
there hasn't been a good wrestling movie forever.
It's Vision Quest.
Yeah.
It hasn't been a wrestling comedy ever.
Yeah.
Not forever, ever.
Yeah.
And then I actually created a show called Adam Hunter's ADD, which was at my own talk show. It's like the Man Show meets Chelsea, and we picked it's with Godfrey's in it, and Corey Holcomb, and Jay Davis, and Mo Collins is in it, and Ben Glebe. A bunch of really funny comedians, Simon Rex, Lisa D'Amato, the model, Flip Schultz, Brad Williams. It's real funny. It's like kind of like a talk show, but like on like meth.
Yeah.
It's a talk show on speed. It's just funny and it's in your face, and we're trying to find a home for it.
Have you thought about webisodes or?
Yeah, the problem is like the guys who put up the money for it, they want a TV.
Oh, they want to, yeah. So you get money behind it. Yeah.
They can't. The internet's tricky. No one's figured out how to make money on it yet, except for like people who don't need the money.
Yeah.
And then I co-created this show called Celebrity Substitutes. It's a show we're pitching right now to Fox, which is like take a bunch of like B or A and B celebrities, and they got to teach a classroom of rowdy kids. And Ben Stein's hopefully gonna host, and then every week he gets at the end of the show they go, "You've been dismissed," and then like the person who affects the kids the most and is the best teacher gets a huge sum for his alma mater.
That's a great idea. Yeah, it's really cool.
So that's a show that me and this guy Nick came up with, and then I'm in this show called The Real Potheads of North Hollywood, which is like it's a pilot where it's like basically about instead of like The Real Housewives, but it's about potheads.
Right. Yeah.
Which is really cool. And then so I came up with those, and then I came up with a show called Kamikaze Comedy that I'm working with Jamie Kennedy on. So we're pitching that as well.
That's cool.
So yeah, and then I host a show on Maverick TV called Man Up Stand Up. I shot 32 episodes of that, and Mav is like this like kind of upstart renegade, like Spike type network. It's on Dish Network.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I got a lot of stuff like and I'm excited because me and my writing partner Dave, who's over there, we're actually finishing the script, and we're just gonna shoot it.
That's cool, man. So do you feel that networking is a big key to your success out here?
Oh yeah, that's the best part about Hollywood is that like, basically, in the morning I could be like, you know what, I've got a great idea for a sketch, and I call my buddy who's a director, I call my friend who's got cameras, I call actors, and without laying out $1, the sketch is done.
Yeah.
And then hopefully we make money on it, somehow. But there's nowhere I think, except maybe New York, and that could happen unless you happen to live with 5 guys who can do that, or girls,
Yeah.
So that's the best.
So
it's the
Hollywood's
best.
the place to make that happen.
And Hollywood I like because, everyone kind of gets all my friends are like either, actors, struggling actors, comedians, struggling comedians, writers, directors, and I have a couple friends here and there that are, cage fighters or something, but, because I was the head writer for the Mixed Martial Arts Awards on Versus, huge fan. But everyone kind of gets the deal, like, okay, 1 minute you're on Last Comic Standing, next minute you're like trying to get a Burger King commercial.
Right. Yeah.
Next minute you're traveling to Milwaukee for $1,000. Next minute you're doing brew code for free. I mean, it's just the way it goes. And people get that. But when I talk to people either I'm on the road or in New York, sometimes family and friends, they don't get it. And not many people can be like, I don't understand this. Hey, can you help me understand? Most people want to tell you their opinions, informed or not.
Yeah.
Most of the time uninformed. So you get a lot of like, hey man, why don't you do this? Or why don't you do that? Or when are you going to make it? Or all you need is one break. Or hey man, like, dude, my cousin is a PA for Monk. You should call him. Just nonsense, you know? And you don't want to be that jaded, cynical jerk who writes everybody off.
Yeah.
That's not a healthy way to live.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, you really have to know how to tune people out.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you'll jump off a bridge.
Yeah, totally. So now you've been out here, you moved to Hollywood, you're doing this thing. Say Vancouver studios call you up tomorrow, and they say, you know what, we love the real potheads of Hollywood, but we're going to call it the real potheads of BC. We come out and join Vancouver studios for at least 6 months?
Yeah. I mean, right now, I would love to be in a position to say no.
Right.
I mean, I'd love to say no. You gotta shoot it here, but I mean, like, sometimes you gotta play the game.
You gotta move where the work is.
You gotta play the game until you could then own the game.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I don't want to do a lot of things that I do, but you gotta do them until you get into the position where you're the one who could say no.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a hard position. It's like you gotta say yes to scripts so you can say no to scripts.
Right.
If you say no, it's like, really? Like, have fun. The guy at Burger King is not going to turn down being the manager.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
It's the way it is.
Yeah. Very cool, man. I think we pretty much got everything.
Brian, you out there? Oh, fuck.
Oh, shit.
You could have walked in, bro.
Yeah.
Fuck, man.
Yeah, I knew it.
Just a nod.
Sorry, man.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
You went across there if you want.
Did you get to hear his, we were listening to his...
It's excellent, man.
So, yeah, I think we pretty much got everything. I'm going to get one more shot from you, but is there anything you feel that we missed?
No, man. Just, really good luck with this, man. I'm really happy to do it. Can you interview my friends?
Yeah, definitely good. I
Oh, cool.
appreciate your time.
Thanks, man.
So
Thank
much.
you.
Let me get one